How have you been, everyone? I hope you all are doing well. Without further ado, let's start the video. Today's story starts. It's been 30 years since the emergence of monsters that threatened our very existence. But in the face of this unimaginable peril, heroes arose. These extraordinary individuals, blessed with superpowers, stood against the darkness and ensured humanity's survival. Their unparalleled bravery and strength have done more than just protect us, they've inspired us. From the ashes of those dark times, a new beacon of hope and unity has emerged, an international sport unlike any other. This sport celebrates the incredible abilities of our heroes, bringing nations together in a spirit of excitement and competition. As we reflect on these past 3 decades, we honor the legacy of those who saved us. Their sacrifices and victories have shaped the world we live in today. Let's celebrate their achievements and the sport that now captures our imaginations and hearts. In this very sport, our main character was a legendary player. However, his underwhelming performance during the summer season and failure to advance to the playoffs seemed to overshadow his past accomplishments and hard work in an instant. As he scrolls through his phone, reading news and comments from his fans, our main character feels the weight of disappointment and doubt. With just 2 seasons of underperformance, he questions his worth. In a moment of frustration, he throws his phone to the ground, symbolizing his inner turmoil. Later, facing his manager, Changhyun, our protagonist is confronted with the reality of his situation. When asked how he's doing, he hesitantly responds. But when his manager suggests that this decision might be his last, our protagonist is stunned.
My last, he repeats, the weight of those words sinking in. The manager spoke again, delivering the president's message. The president wants you to step down and focus on the marketing and business side of things instead. Then, he raised another issue. There is the matter of your mandatory military service. You know you can't do this forever, right? Hearing this, our main character couldn't help but reflect. I was just told to leave the team immediately. Claiming I had never thought about retirement would be a lie. It's inevitable that I will grow old and my skills would deteriorate, but I can't believe my manager is telling me to become the team figurehead. Especially when I have been single-handedly leading them to victory. Suddenly, our main character slammed the table with a kick and uttered angrily, "Son of a bitch." The manager visibly flinched at the outburst. As our main character began to walk towards the door to leave, the manager exclaimed, "Where are you going?" But our main character responded firmly. "I don't think I need to hear more from you." Angered, the manager retorted, "You little brat. You are an ungrateful little shit, you know that. Show some respect and listen when an adult is speaking to you. This is why your public image is so poor, and everyone is calling for your retirement. I never should have bothered raising a worthless ingrate like you." And hearing that, our main character stopped and looked back towards the manager. Slowly, he began walking towards the manager, who visibly trembled in fear. With a trembling voice, "You raised me, did you get so cozy that you forgot who actually got you here?" In a moment of introspection, our main character thought, "Is it only you who did not tempt me?" He recalled the skill of his full bloom, visualizing its rank progression increasing with time. He remembered how activating full bloom in high school had been a turning point. When the manager said, "I only did what I thought was best for you," our main character couldn't contain his frustration. Suddenly, he threw the manager to the ground, thinking to himself, "It's all because of him, but nothing will change. Even if I resorted to violence against him. I feel worthless. I have so many prophecies in my head, but this is how it ends." Then, a revelation dawned upon him. With a surge of emotion, our main character realized he possessed a special ability, the all-seeing eye, S+. This version adds emotion to the narrative, highlighting the protagonist's inner turmoil and realization of his unique ability. Then, we see all the abilities our main character possesses process in his mind. With a heavy heart, he thinks to himself, "But I have no room for improvement anymore. All that remains is my aging body and a skill that hit a premature roadblock. My full bloom stopped me from growing any further. What was the point of it all? I wonder if there are any reasons to continue living." Our main character thinks again, "I don't see a point anymore." As he crosses the road, a truck suddenly appears in front of him. With a deafening crash, the truck collides with our main character, sending him sprawling to the ground. As bystanders rush to the scene, shock and panic fill the air. Someone call an ambulance, 911. They've been in an accident. In that brief moment of chaos, our main character thinks to himself, no, that's not true. I wanted to keep trying just a little more. I wanted to hear the crowd chant my name again. In that moment, as our main character lies on the ground, a mysterious ring on his finger. At the same time, our main character thinks again, I wanted to show an incredible performance on that heart-pounding stage and come out on top with my team. Tears streaming down his face, our main character is consumed by regret as he recalls, that was the last thing I could remember from my past life. In the midst of his despair, our protagonist suddenly experiences a sensation of time travel. He reflects, everyone probably fantasizes about it at least once. People always have regrets, so it's typical for them to harbor a desire to go back in time. Of course, it's usually nothing more than a fantasy since it's impossible, but suddenly, our protagonist receives a message after dying. The message reads, your examination is complete. Physical attributes reset result. Strength 5, Reflex 6, Flexibility 6.6, Endurance 5, Regeneration 5. Please press the button on your lower right side and get up. Feeling a sense of disbelief, our main character contemplates, what is this? With a mixture of confusion and curiosity, he thinks to himself, when I open my eyes, I realize I had returned to the day my legacy began. As the scene shifts, we see our main protagonist talking with a man. The man says, all right, the results are back. Please wait a moment. Then, with a reassuring smile, the man hands a paper to our protagonist's mother, saying, congratulations. Your son is indeed an awakener. Grateful, our protagonist's mother says to the man, right, thank you. Then, our protagonist turns to his mother and says, Mom, it's done. Let's go. His mom agrees, saying, yeah. Next, we see our protagonist and his mom standing in front of the Awakener testing building. The protagonist's mother asks, when did you find out? Our protagonist responds, not that long ago. Concerned, his mother warns, you better not be thinking of anything silly. Our protagonist retorts, like what? Becoming a hunter. His mother responds firmly, let's say you manage to become one, who is silent in itself. The hunters you see on TV are only the top players of the first division representing a tiny elite. If that's your expectation, you should give up on it now. Inwardly, our protagonist thinks, Mom, I am actually from the future and was a legendary player in the hunting league is what I like to tell her, but she wouldn't believe it. Our protagonist turns to his mother and confidently says, well, I will prove it to you. Hearing this, our protagonist's mother gently slaps him on the back and says, I don't want you to prove anything. You will be in high school next year. You need to focus on your studies. Undeterred, our protagonist laughs and runs away, shouting back, don't worry. I will. However, his mother's voice follows him, stern and serious. I am serious, she shouts. Our protagonist smirks to himself, thinking, yeah, I will prove it to her. Let's see what a legendary hunter can do. Talent may be temporary, but class is permanent. Suddenly, our protagonist remembers the moment when he first woke up after returning to the past. Reflecting on his potential to become a hunter, he thinks, though we can use state-of-the-art technology to analyze physical capability potential, there is one thing that tests cannot determine. Skill. Focusing on his hand, he notices a mysterious light enveloping it. He contemplates further, normally, beginners can only sense what their skills are or how to use them. But not me, because I have the all-seeing eye. As our protagonist lies on the ground, he observes the status window in front of him and thinks to himself, my full bloom is back to rank E, as expected. His eyes scan the window, noting his skills. With one skill labeled as locked. Reflecting on this, he muses, skills can be leveled up, and I can always earn my perks again. What's important for me right now is getting adjusted to my current body and skills. Gazing at his reflection in the mirror, he can't help but feel a sense of disappointment. Pretty pathetic, he mutters to himself. Suddenly, he hears his father's voice saying, that's why I am saying, we should watch him for a year. Surprised, our protagonist responds with a puzzled, huh. Meanwhile, his parents are engaged in a heated argument about him. His father insists, it's his life. He should be allowed to do whatever he wants with it. His mother counters, he's only in middle school. Allowing him to have free reign would be irresponsible. Undeterred, his father persists, that's why I am saying, we should only give him a year. It's just 1 year. If it does not work out, he can move on, right? Concerned, his mother points out, do you realize how important even 1 year is at his age? What will you do if Changhyun wastes his time pursuing a fruitless dream while all his classmates get good grades because they spent their time studying? Seeing his parents arguing about him, our protagonist thinks, yikes, yeah, my mom was totally against me becoming a hunter. But I can't afford to waste time arguing with her. His mother insists, so many things can change in just a year. Hearing this, our main character recalls something and thinks, she is right. In 1 year, a player can compete in dozens of matches, gaining experience and improving their skills through every one. In my previous life, my full bloom would have been at least rank B if I had started a year earlier. That alone would have made a big difference in how things turned out. Suddenly, our main character interrupts his parents' argument, declaring, I don't need a year. Just give me 6 months. I will prove it to you within 6 months. Mom, I am serious. Hearing this, his father feels a mix of concern and excitement. Our protagonist, resolute, adds, I will show you. Next, we see our protagonist standing in front of the Awakeners' training facilities. He turns to a girl at the entrance and says, what? I can't go in. The girl replies, yes, minors require guardian approval to enter. So I need a signature from a guardian, is that correct? Our protagonist asks. Yes, it is, she confirms. Frustrated, our main character thinks, I totally forgot about this because I was an adult in my previous life. I won't be able to get any practice done if I go home right now. Our protagonist asks again, is there any other way? Just then, someone approaches from behind and says, Changhyun, hi. What brings you here? Our protagonist turns and thinks, Dojun Kim. In my first life, he was a close-range fighter who consistently placed rank 2 or 3 in the first division. He never secured the top spot but was often linked to the top-ranked player. As long as he performed alright, frankly speaking, he had it easy. But of course. Feigning ignorance, our protagonist says, who are you? And thinks, in this life, I am not supposed to know who he is. Dojun Kim tries to explain himself, saying, I'm in the class next to yours. My name is Dojun, doesn't ring a bell. I'm quite well known in our school for being an awakener. Feigning surprise, our protagonist replies, oh, right. First time I've heard of you. Hearing this, Dojun looks a bit dejected but quickly recovers. Yeah, that can happen. So anyway, what are you doing here? Are you auditioning for the Soul Hunter Academy Youth Club? Our protagonist responds, no, I want to use the training facility, but they say I need my parents' permission. Dojun's face lights up with excitement. Do you want my help? I'm a member of the Academy Youth Club, so I have free access. Thinking to himself, so he was part of the club at this point, our protagonist evaluates the situation. Dojun continues, but I want to watch you practice in return. Our protagonist thinks, nothing is ever free, I guess. Aloud, he says, sure. Internally, he thinks, it's a little annoying, but I don't have anything to lose. Hearing that, the receptionist says to both of them, all right, I have made a reservation for you with Soul Hunter Academy. Mr. Dojun will act as your guardian. Please head to room 3. The scene shifts to the training room where our protagonist is lacing up his shoes. We see our protagonist and Dojun talking. Dojun says, like I said earlier, I'm in the Academy Club, but because most of the members are older than me and I don't know anyone, it's been hard to fit in. So, why did you come here? You said you're not taking the test, but this place is usually empty. No one seems to use it for training. Our protagonist replies, probably not since they are all preparing for the Hunters League. This is a general-purpose facility after all. You sure you want to stay? I'm just going to test out my skills and get some exercise done, so it won't be particularly exciting. Hearing that, Dojun gets a bit embarrassed but offers, well, I could lend a hand if you like, since we go to the same school and all. Our protagonist thinks to himself, still the attention seeker, even in this life, I see. If I include my past life, I'm a decade older than him. I'm obviously not going to ask him for help. Out loud, He says, "Thanks, but I think I've got it covered." Inside, he remains focused on his goal, testing his skills and adjusting to his current body without drawing too much attention. Then we see our protagonist adjusting the settings of the training ground and completing the process. In front of him, a tank appears, clad in a suit in virtual reality. Seeing this, our protagonist thinks, "That's the tank clone I summoned." If you were to draw a comparison to a video game, I suppose they'd be something like training dummies. The only difference is, the clone summons a shield in its right hand. Our protagonist continues his thought, "It's so sturdy that it's almost impossible to even leave a scratch." Suddenly, Dojun says to our protagonist, "Changhyun, did you press the wrong button? You should summon a regular clone if you're looking to practice. Even in practice mode, it will be really difficult to make any dent at your current level." Hearing that, our protagonist replies, "What are you talking about?" He materializes a spear in his hand and says, "Punching bags are supposed to be tough. Difficult to make any dent, huh? Speak for yourself." He thinks to himself, to overcome something tough and robust, striking it with something even harder and stronger is the easiest approach. Obviously, I'm not currently able to do that, but that doesn't mean I have no other options. Our protagonist jumps into the air, targeting the shoulder of the tank. He thinks, "I need to target its joints." He attacks the tank with his spear, landing gracefully on the ground. "Alright, I have good control over my body. And now, all-seeing eye," he thinks. He opens his eyes and activates his all-seeing eye skill. With this ability, he spots the weak points of the tank. Without hesitation, he strikes the weak joint, destroying the tank within seconds. Reflecting on his success, he thinks, "I don't think it went that well. I should have recorded it." Seeing the impressive feat, Dojun exclaims, "Whoa, nice one. I'm guessing you must have set its defense state to the lowest. You would have needed a unique weapon to deal any damage to it otherwise." Hearing this, our protagonist thinks, is he twisting what he saw because he couldn't make sense of it? Dojun, our protagonist's friend, says, "Still, you had some impressive moves. I bet you'll pass the audition. Have you trained in sword fighting or spear fighting? I guess I want to also give it a go before our team training lessons later." Hearing that, our protagonist says, "Go ahead." In his mind, he thinks, I don't need to explain anything to him. He will see for himself when he tries it out. Dojun, holding a sword, is soon out of breath and sweating. He thinks, I swear he did it like this. The same tank clone that our protagonist fought earlier now stands in front of Dojun, but its defenses are set to the lowest. Dojun says to himself, I set its defense to the lowest too, and he thinks, so why isn't the clone taking any damage? He continues to strike at the clone, frustration growing as he realizes that he can't make a dent in it. Knowing that the true challenge lies in technique and skill, not just raw power. Dojun, panting heavily, looks over at the clone, bewildered by our protagonist's earlier success. How did you do it? He finally asks, a mix of admiration and confusion in his voice. Dojun, sweating profusely, thinks to himself, I must have configured something wrong. From behind him, one of his seniors shouts, Hey Dojun, are you not going to greet your senior? Dojun bows to his senior and says, Jisoo, it's good to see you. Seeing the tank clone, Jisoo asks, why are you hitting a tanker clone? Dojun replies, I was just warming up and getting some practice done. Jisoo responds incredulously, who the hell practices on a tanker clone to warm up? He touches Dojun's forehead and says, you won't be able to make a dent at the lowest defense settings. Don't be silly. The scene shifts, and we see our main character on a train. He thinks to himself, I am too weak. The General Purpose Hunter Center offers basic training facilities for hunters. After Dojun left, I had the chance to try out the monsters encountered in the Hunters League or the AI Hunter feature, which acts as a sparring partner. I've come to the conclusion that I am far too weak. My all-seeing eye is only at rank B, so I can't even deliver a powerful strike. My physical stats are only slightly higher than a civilian in good shape. I need to work on my physique if I want more power. At least my full bloom is boosting my recovery speed. I can only overcome this by training. He grabs his head and thinks again, but I don't have enough time since the Hunter Center is only available to club members in the evening. And it's not like I can get permission from my parents every time I want to train. maybe I need to find somewhere else that I can train alone. Then we see our main character's phone ring, and it's Dojun Kim calling. As our protagonist picks up the call, he says, "Hello." On the other end of the phone, Dojun asks, "Are you coming to train?" Hearing that, our protagonist replies, "Why?" Dojun then says, "I'll buy you dinner. Wanna come?" The scene shifts to a restaurant where we see Dojun sitting at a table, waiting for our protagonist. As our protagonist enters through the door, Dojun shouts, "Over here." Both of them sit at the same table. Our protagonist remarks, "You must have a lot of money." Dojun replies, "Too much, really. Becoming a hunter isn't feasible if your family isn't well off, as you are aware." Our protagonist responds, "Yeah, true." He thinks to himself, the awakener tests and the price of weapons are extremely costly. Even with too much money, he's exactly the same as he was in my past life. He always did whatever he could to get in the spotlight. After that, our protagonist says to Dojun, "So why did you ask me to come?" Dojun replies, "What do you mean?" Our protagonist responds, "I'm sure you're not treating me to dinner because you thought I couldn't afford it myself." Hearing that, Dojun admits, "You're right. The dinner is just an excuse. I wanted to ask you a question." Our protagonist then asks, "Is it about the tanker clone?" Dojun nods and says, "I tried to do it exactly the same way you did, but it didn't work. So I was wondering if you configured something differently." Suddenly, three boys enter the restaurant, interrupting their conversation. Hearing the three boys talking, our protagonist thinks, they're wearing the same uniform as Dojun. Are they his teammates? One of the boys says to the others, "So, as I was saying, that absolute baboon was hitting a tanker clone with a mithril sword." Another boy asks, "Was he testing out the sturdiness of his sword?" Then the senior from earlier chimes in, "He was genuinely trying to break the tanker clone with it. I was at a loss for words, and it was so loud." The three boys sit at a table, and one says again, "So I asked him what he was doing, and apparently, he saw his friend do it." "Yeah, right, maybe I should have asked him if his friend shoots laser beams out of his forehead." Another adds, "Must have been fun watching two fools go at it." The last one concludes, "Unfortunately, his friend wasn't there." Hearing that, our protagonist thinks to himself, so basically, he was being a nuisance while Dojun was working hard. Can't let that pass. Suddenly, our protagonist slams his cup on the table and says, "The configuration for the tanker clone. No, you didn't need to change anything as long as you know the trick to it. Still, good for you for trying to figure it out. There are some jerks out there who claim it's impossible just because they are incapable of doing it." Hearing that, the three seniors get angry. Ignoring them, our protagonist continues, "Does no one in your academy know how to do it? Did your friend over there pay his way in?" Dojun quickly tries to defuse the situation, "Changhyun, don't say that." One of the senior boys then approaches their table, slams his foot on it, and says, "Keep it shut, Dojun." "Changhyun, was it? Who do you think you are, disrespecting an academy student? If an awakener like me were to hit you, there wouldn't be much left of you. I'll give you just 3 seconds. You better make things right." Seeing that, our protagonist thinks, why is he talking like that? Sounds straight out of a cliché movie. And I was looking forward to the free dinner. Suddenly, our protagonist stands up from his seat and punches the senior boy in the face. The other two boys, seeing their friend get punched in the face, are shocked and say, "Jisoo." They hold their friend and look towards our main character. Our protagonist, looking at the three seniors, thinks, if someone gives me 3 seconds, that's what I'm gonna do. He smiles and thinks, I will never turn down an opportunity to strike first. The senior who got punched shouts, "You little shit." Our protagonist replies, "Look, you might be a senior to Dojun, but to me, you are just a stranger, so don't mess with me." Enraged, the senior tries to punch our main character, saying, "What was that?" But our protagonist effortlessly avoids the punch and says, "What did you say earlier? There wouldn't be a mass of me left if you hit me." "Too bad, that's a big lie." The senior gets even angrier and tries to punch our protagonist again, shouting, "Son of a..." Our protagonist blocks the punch and, at the same time, lands a powerful punch on his opponent, sending him staggering back. The senior, taking the punch to his face, remains silent for a moment before saying, "You have really done it now." Hearing that, our protagonist thinks, is he? The senior then uses his skills. Seeing this, our protagonist activates his all-seeing eye and thinks, "My all-seeing eye is giving me a warning." The senior unleashes his gravity magic on our protagonist. Our protagonist jumps from his spot, avoiding the attack, and thinks, "A gravity attack? Is he actually going to use a skill here with civilians around us?" We see Dojun escorting the civilians out of the restaurant, trying to minimize the danger. Despite this, the senior continues his assault, not caring about the bystanders. Our protagonist keeps dodging the attacks and thinks, "I wasn't going to go too hard on him, but..." He then says to the senior, "Hey, Jisoo, you are dead." The senior retorts, "That's my line," and attacks with his gravity magic again. Feeling the pressure, our protagonist thinks, "Crap, I can see his skills thanks to my all-seeing eye, but I can't close the distance. Alright, fine." He picks up a plate from the ground and throws it towards the senior. The plate hurtles through the air, aiming directly at Jisoo's face. Stopping the plate in midair with his power, the senior smiles and says, "Do you really think that will work against me?" Our protagonist, unfazed, throws another plate at the senior's face and says, "You should have dodged." He continues to hurl multiple plates towards the senior, thinking, "When you use a skill, you must wait before you can use it again. This is known as the skill going on cooldown." Seeing the barrage of plates coming his way, the senior panics and exclaims, "Holy." Noticing the senior's panic, our protagonist thinks, "But if you use your skill without thinking about the cooldown." He then shouts to the senior, "One more coming your way," and throws another plate, knowing the senior's gravity magic is on cooldown and he won't be able to stop it. Seeing the barrage of plates, the senior thinks, "Crap, I can't use my skill." Then, our protagonist hurls a plate directly at his face. The senior, unable to defend himself, is hit squarely in the face. Our protagonist thinks, "You will be left completely open to enemy attacks." Furious, the senior shouts, "Enough with your tricks," but he doesn't see our protagonist in front of him. Where the hell did he go? From behind, our protagonist calls out, "Heads." The senior panics, "What?" before taking a punch to the stomach. "Son of a, you said heads," he groans. Our protagonist shouts again, "Heads." The senior, now bewildered, thinks, "Where will he hit this time? Is it going to be my stomach again?" But our protagonist punches him in the face. "Heads." Our protagonist repeats the word, landing punch after punch on the senior's face. After taking numerous hits, the senior is eventually knocked out, collapsing to the floor in defeat. Afterward, our protagonist surveys his surroundings and thinks, "Now what? I'm not the one who wrecked the place, but I did hit him first. And he's the one on the ground while I'm unscathed. Dojun and his friends are gone, too. What should I do?" Then, noticing the police approaching, he thinks, "Crap, it's the police. Guess I have no other choice." He quickly makes some bruises on his face and throws water on Jisoo's face, then lies on the ground, pretending to be unconscious. When Jisoo wakes up, he groggily says, "What?" Seeing our protagonist lying on the ground beneath him, he angrily mutters, "You son of a." At that moment, our protagonist friends and a police officer enter the restaurant. Then he shouts to the officer, "Officer, over here." Realizing the precarious situation, Jisoo stops his threats. Meanwhile, our protagonist raises his hands in front of his face and pleads, "Stop, please don't hurt me anymore." Seeing the scene, the police officer, armed with an electric gun, commands, "Hands in the air. Do not resist." Our protagonist thinks, "It seems that I successfully deceived the police with my performance because I was spared any legal repercussions." The scene shifts to the police station, where our protagonist and the seniors are seated in front of a police officer. Our protagonist reflects, Jisoo probably didn't tell the truth either because he didn't want to admit he was defeated by a newbie. But even if he did, it was clear that he had used his gravity skill, which would have made him more liable either way. Then the scene shifts to the training ground, and Dojun says to our protagonist, "Jisoo, yeah, it's been rough for him recently. He got an earful from the other team members, and there are rumors that he might get kicked out." Hearing this, our protagonist thinks, "Looks like justice prevailed." Dojun then asks, "Aren't you going to take a break?" Confirming the training dummy details, our protagonist replies, "I don't have time for breaks." He holds his spear, ready for combat again, and thinks, "My full bloom gives me an advantage when I accomplish a notable feat. In other words, I gain a new skill." Our protagonist jumps in the air, holding his spear, and shouts, "Hands." He attacks the dummy with his spear, and a status panel appears, showing, "Full bloom, awakened talent, calling your attacks." Seeing his hand, he thinks, "I didn't think what I did to Jisoo would be considered a feat. I never saw this skill before in my past life." He remembers the moment when he beat Jisoo and thinks again, "The trick is to make people think I am weird." The scene shifts to our protagonist's house at the dining table, where his parents ask, "You're going to try out for a hunter audition survival show?" He replies, "Yes, just watch. I will prove myself to you too." Thinking to himself, he recalls, Hunters, The Next Generation, a television show dedicated to discovering and mentoring up-and-coming hunters. Finally, it's up for registration. His mother expresses concern, "But won't it be super competitive if it's a TV show?" His father interjects, "Leave him be. You can't ever succeed if you never take a chance." His mother retorts, "Oh, is that why you ruined your business, because you took a chance?" Angrily, his father responds, "Do you really have to bring that up?" Trying to break up the argument, our protagonist explains, "If I win the competition, I will earn a spot in the academy or even get to choose a Division 3 team to join. On top of that, the prize money is pretty big, and they will even make me a custom weapon." His mother remains skeptical, "Right, I'm sure they will since it's so competitive." Excitedly, our protagonist says, "I am going to do my best." Seeing their son's confidence, his parents are taken aback. His mother says, "All right, but don't come crying to me if you fail." Our protagonist thinks to himself, "It's definitely a very competitive show since they are selecting the most promising candidates for the Hunter League from all across the nation." He reflects further, "But because of that, there are significant incentives for the top performers, even if they don't come first. Whatever the case, they're just a bunch of amateurs. Don't worry, Mom and Dad, I held countless trophies in my hands." Remembering the moment he won the championship in his previous life, he grips his spoon and thinks, "I won't lose to amateurs." The scene shifts to the training ground, where we see our protagonist standing atop destroyed training dummies.